what machine does most pounds per hour?
Okay, volume. So volume, we shouldn't be asking ourselves the question, how many pounds per hour or minute or second or whatever the trimmer trims. It's volume, volume, volume. You could have something this big that weighs twice as much as something else this big. And that's why it's all about volume. So, which machine holds the most volume? Which the machine does the most volume per hour is the question. How much stuff fits in at a given time? Thank you for logging on to monstergardens.com. As you've seen in a lot of our videos, what we like to do is compare products against each other. In this circumstance, we have a really exciting comparison for you. Not only do we have a really high-end product, but we have 3 of them to compare, the 3 titans, the biggest trimmers on the market. So industrial, commercial, whatever you want to classify it as, if you're looking for a big trimming machine, this video is going to be a great comprehensive breakdown of the differences of the 3 biggest machines that we recognize being the best on the market. So here we have the first machine, which is the grower's wet dream. Let's just imagine that. It's a beautiful billet aluminum, all the bells and whistles you could ask for in a trim machine, all built into one unit. This is the T2. This is not the same unit that was out last year. The blade's actually 25% closer on this tube than it was on last year's model, so they did make a betterment there. This also has a ramp now. So you can actually purchase a ramp that will tilt the trimmer for you if you decide to do that, and will work with the 2 trimmer combination because you can actually hook these trimmers into each other. That's one of the great features of the Twister, is that multiple units can hook together.
So basically you can see that you can barely get a piece of paper in between the 2 blades there. Now some of the more intricate details inside of this. I've already taken the liberty of removing the safety for the tumbler here, and now I'm going to show you how to remove the tumbler so you can expose the blades and see what's going on in there. There's some really innovative features that I'd like to show you guys. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to loosen up the tightening knob here, and then you're going to grab the belt, which is going to go ahead and remove tension from the belt, and you're going to tighten it back up and then remove the belt. What this is going to allow you to do is to get the tumbler out, which will allow you to expose the blades. First we're going to remove the blade guard though. As you can see, it's a very clean cutting surface, and there's actually 2 sets of blades in here that we're going to show you. So we carefully remove the aluminum cylinder, and I say carefully because this is probably the most integral part of the machine. If this gets bent, you're really in bad shape. They're in the proper position so that there's a little bit of friction between them, and again, that's what causes the sharpening. Also important to note, with this product, it is important to use what they recommend as a lubricant, which is the Clear Cut product, which is food grade vegetable-based oil that's used for lubricating all your parts. The simplest way to do it, of course, is to just spray it on here when you get it rolling, and that'll get the lubricant all over all of your moving parts here and reduce friction, and therefore get your product moving through there a lot faster. And put more than one of these machines together so that you can run it through one and into the second one. Have your 2 switches here, start and stop. This one controls the tumbler obviously, and this one controls the blades. It does have a really good, easy to use socket there. We just plugged a normal extension cord into it to let it run, which you'll notice also has 2 convenient cup holders for you and your friend. Discreet and protected, so you can still strap it down on the back of your rig and get it wherever it is you need it to go.
The next trimmer that we're going to go over is a satellite trimmer. Now, a satellite trimmer is doing it as a barrel style. This is a lot different than the tube style trimmers. This is what we call a vertical operation trimmer. It uses mechanical fingers, so it has a motor on the top that's going to move the fingers around as the blade is cutting on the base in the opposite direction. Now this is a bigger version of some trimmers you might have seen before, such as the Trim Pro Rotor, the Trim Pro Automatic, but it does do it a little bit differently. It's much more delicate on the material, and it has all the bells and whistles that a grower would want on a commercial sized trimmer. So the next trimmer that we're looking at is the Centurion. Now the Centurion has a very similar cutting style to the Twister. There's also a number of different copycats to this trimming style. So what the folks at Centurion did is they tried to make the unit more cost effective for customers. So what they did was shave down the actual framework of the unit. They wanted to make it compact, they wanted to make it easy to move from one location to the next, and they wanted it to be able to fit into a small area. So as you notice, not only is their bag collector a lot smaller than the Twisters over here, but the unit itself is much more compact than the Twister. Let's get a comparison here. Let's move the satellite up out of the way. You can get a kind of a comparison. So here we have our first direct head-by-head comparison. We have the Centurion and we have the Twister. The Centurion is in the high $8,000 range MSRP, where the Twister is in the high $13,000 range. So there is quite a bit of difference in price. And you have to ask yourself the question, what are the main differences between the two machines? Why am I spending quite a bit more with this machine than I am with this? Well, let's just imagine. If you are somebody that is using this machine in a lot of different locations, you're moving it from place to place over and over again, you might like the compact style of the Centurion, being able to put it into a small area, maybe a small trailer, and be able to move it around, or maybe even the back of your truck. You definitely don't need a trailer with this guy. But let's just say you're maybe heavy-handed with stuff, or you're going to be bringing the machine into places where it might get bumped or it might get bumped into things. Then this framework on this Twister might be very attractive to you. As you can see, they've done a great job of giving this nice billet aluminum frame and really making this thing as bulletproof and as safeguarded as it could be with the framework that they've built around it. The other difference between the Centurion and the Twister is going to be the hopper. The Centurion has actually a larger hopper system than the Twister, but maybe it's not a hugely hot topic because let's just imagine you're not going to be maybe filling this up too deep before you go through. You don't want your material to be sitting too deep for too long of a period of time, especially if it's warm outside. But if you're in a cold area, you can definitely stack this thing up pretty decently and get it going. The hopper on the Twister is about this size. It's pretty much going to be a place for you to drop material in. We only see the hopper of being full maybe about halfway to keep its functionality. And let's talk about some other features. They've given you a place to put cups and maybe leave your scissors, even though we don't recommend that you bring scissors anywhere near this device. This is a very delicate place. If you drop scissors here, you will spend a lot of money to remedy the situation. So, maybe you have some oil here. Maybe you're using some oil as a lubricant with your machine. Maybe you have the clear cut product. Maybe you're spraying it as you go to keep it clean so it's not getting gummed up. But anyways, they've given you a holster. And what did the Centurion guys do? Well, they gave you a cover. You don't need to be staring at the unit while it's operating. So while it's on operation, you just simply put the cover on. But I really like the fact that they are giving you a plastic sheath to safeguard the components with your cup holders. Being open like this and having your cup holders, I don't like the fact that you can pour liquid. Even though we know that there is water resistance to the machine, we never want someone to pour their beer on accident into it. Or worst case scenario, a pair of scissors if they're keeping their scissors lubricated in some liquid here. So this is actually a really cool feature. Actually, doing a side-by-side comparison, I like the fact that we can cover this unit up really simply and easily while it's in operation. So the big question is, what machine of these two does more volume? There's a simple way to be able to answer that question. To figure out how much volume each tube will hold, specifically in the cutting area. So let's do that. So as you can see here, the Centurion's barrel looks a lot shorter than the Twister's barrel. But the important part is how much cutting surface are you getting. That is, in essence, its cutting capability and its cutting volume. So on the Centurion here, we're just going to measure the part of the barrel that actually has the grill cut out holes because that's where it's cutting. It's about 22 inches on the Centurion here. Let's measure the Twister. And the cutting surface is almost identical. I mean, literally, it's pretty much identical. They both have about 22 inches of cutting surface. Now, that's just the length. Let's do the diameter because that's going to equal its volume. So the diameter of the twister it's about 6 inches in diameter, in the inside diameter of the twister tube. Let's take a look at the Centurion. Wow, okay, so the Centurion actually has almost a 6.5 inch to inside diameter. I'll just say 6 1/4, a little bit above 6 1/4, because I might not be completely centered here on the circle, but it's a little over 6 1/4, so you're actually getting a 1/4 inch diameter bigger. Is that going to equate to a lot more material fitting in here? Let's just not say that it's going to be a lot more, but a slight incremental difference. But on the twister, you actually get a little bit more room to stack material in on both sides than you do on the Centurion. But let's admit this, we cannot state that one of these machines has a unique difference in its cutting volume than another. We just basically did the measurement. So what somebody's going to ask is, how fast does the tube spin? You know, they're very, very close to each other, how fast they spin. And you don't want a tube that's spinning too fast, because that's going to equate into friction on the material. So really, these machines' tubes are spinning about as fast as they should be, and they're very similar to each other. So we will actually deem these two machines as having almost identical, not saying one is more or less, very close to each other, cutting capability off the two machines. But the components on the twister, you can definitely tell, are slightly more high-end. They did give you a larger design, so you're not having to bend over as much as on the Centurion. As you can see, the Centurion's a few inches shorter. The twister also has this nice cage built around it, so that it's going to safeguard it against any sort of mishaps when you're moving the machine. But the Centurion's also really light, so you know, this machine's going to be simple and easy for someone my size just to pick up, lift into their car. Where this machine, you're definitely going to need 2 people to move it up and over onto something. It's almost like comparing a Porsche and a Corvette. We all would like both, but one person might want one versus another. So let's go ahead and talk about one of the other big commercial industrial style trimming machines that we touched upon really in the beginning of the video, which is this guy, this satellite trimmer. Now, we're not going to go too far into the satellite trimmer and what it does, because we have a video that we just produced that goes far in depth with what this machine will do. And take a look at that video. We'll put the link below this video. So what we have here is what they call a mechanical finger driven trimmer, which means instead of a tube rolling going sideways, it uses fingers to do so. And some people might think that there's a lot more friction on the material, but these fingers are very delicate, very soft. And this machine has the ability to move the fingers at whatever pace you decide. So you could move the material really slow through the machine or really fast. It gives you the ability to adjust the speed the material flows through the machine, so you have the ability to function how much friction you're putting on the material. Now, how much cutting volume will this machine do in comparison to these? Let's admit that it's actually very similar. We do not see a unique difference of cutting capability or capacity versus the Centurion, versus the Satellite, or versus the Twister. Does one cut faster than the other? Well, the truth is, that's a personal preference that also has to do with the variety that you're growing. Some varieties need to go through these machines longer than others. Some people want a more close trim than others, and they're looking for that specifically, so they might run the material through the machine longer than another. The Satellite can actually hold slightly more volume at a given time, but it takes a slight longer period of time to get the same cut from what we've seen. So we would say that the Satellite, in comparison to the Centurion and the Twister, doesn't necessarily have less cutting capability. It actually might have slightly more. And it's, again, a very slight incremental difference. There is not a unique difference to how much material this will cut volume-wise in a given time than the Centurion or the Twister. It is very similar in comparison on the side. So you have the ability to cut, so you have a little staging area, which is really cool. And you're obviously dropping the material in here. Your mechanical fingers are moving around like this. When you're done with the material, you open this, you tilt your barrel, you let the material flow through. The machine's never stopping. You drop more material in here, you close it on up. And the cool thing about this over these two machines is the fact that you can adjust the speed. So really, we do see the functionality of the Satellite being slightly better, the functionality, than the Centurion and the Twister. But it is different. It is different. And the cool thing about the Satellite too is you don't have a bag collector. There's nothing creating that amazing amount of noise. There is a fan built into this, but is much quieter in operation than these two other machines. Much quieter. It doesn't sound like you're resurfacing your floors if you're using it indoors like these other two machines. It's actually much quieter. Now this machine has the ability to fully break down and does have a bag that it comes in. So you can fully break down this machine, you can place it inside of the bag. Very simple and easy to do. So this actually is a portable machine, just as these two are, but this actually breaks down into an easier carrying capability than these two other machines right here. So what is the bag collector? The bag collector is all the suction through the machine that's collecting the trim, that's collecting the waste off of the machine. So the twister, it's this, you connect the hose in right here. All of the suction on the blades basically coming to a head at this unit. So all of the flower trim that's going to come off this machine is going to filter through this unit, is going to come in through this dust collector, which we'll call a trim collector now, and it's going to be caught and held in here, so you can do any extraction process at the end that you would like to do with your trim. Now,
So what's the top bag for?
the top bag is actually, it's just creating a suction chamber. So all of the suction's going up here where the heavy stuff's dropping down here. So that's simply all it's doing, is it's separating the air so you can get the most amount of suction possible. Now the Centurion has a very similar method. All of your trim gets collected in this bag right here. It's a little more of a simplified way of doing it. Is it better? We'll let you be the judge. This right here, the way they collect your trim is through this base right here. So as it's getting sucked, it gets blown down into this bag, and it's kind of cool. They have 3 layers of bags. 2 of them are filtering the material. So you'll actually be filtering your pollen as it's collecting the trim in this machine. And that's one of the unique features of the Satellite over all of the other trim machines. So what you're going to end up doing is plugging this guy into a 120 volt power supply. You're going to end up plugging this guy into 240 power supply. So you do need to know that you need those capabilities. In this unit as well, you're going to plug the actual power to this trimmer into a 120 power supply, and you're going to plug the power for the bag collector, which is the vacuum, 2 separate units, just like the twister. You're going to plug this also into a 240 power supply. So you need to have both of those capabilities if you're buying either the Centurion or the twister, where the Satellite works off a single 120 volt power supply. Now let's talk about some things that one trimmer might have that the other trimmer doesn't. Speakers. These guys actually gave you speakers. You know, it might not be a hot topic. You might have a really cool stereo in your garden or in your trimming area, but if you don't, you know, here's a really cool feature that they added to this unit that you can, you know, rock out while you're trimming your